What's up everyone, Brian Phobos here. Today we are going to have a very important video about EOS. We're trying to reach 975,000 subscribers by the end of 2018. Let's get into this. Sometimes you have to look at the past and the present to determine the future. So Dan Larimer is the main developer on EOS project, and his first project was BitShares and his second project was STEEM. So let's look at these, and you see BitShares, that is mainly a decentralized exchange, has done over 1 million transactions in a 24-hour period of time at its peak. And you see STEEM is the champion here, 1.6 million transactions in a 24-hour period of time. And if you see both of these networks, you see that they are nowhere near capacity. 0.06% capacity for BitShares right now currently, and for STEEM 0.13% capacity. Have a lot of room to do more transactions. But you see Ethereum and the network, the needle is pegged right there, 18,786 unconfirmed transactions. You see the Bitcoin network completely pegged as always, 89,000 unconfirmed transactions. So to have real world applications on them, you need the capacity to do tons of transactions. BitShares and STEEM has that. EOS is going to be the third iteration or the third project that Dan Larimer is working on. He delivers with these. So let's take a look at BitShares, decentralized exchange. We see different information about this. You can look and see the current activity on the blockchain. Uses delegated proof of stake. These are the witnesses. Essentially, these are the miners processing the blocks, processing the transactions. We see the activity firing off one after another. You know, all these different orders firing off, and this is completely decentralized. They don't see your keys. I'm still bullish on BitShares. There's a lot of search volume coming out of China. Since the exchanges have kind of been locked down in China, people are looking for alternatives like this. Obviously, there was the recent scare over in South Korea. Countries locked down exchanges. People look for alternatives like these decentralized exchanges where you own your keys and you control your coins. So very useful to the cryptocurrency market. The thing works. And then you have an alias. You don't send to these long keys. You don't say, hey, my address is 1X, capital V, Y, C, 24. You don't say that. It's like, you have your name. See mine up here, Johnny Crypto. I see that name used a lot. So I guess I'm anonymous amongst all these other people making their accounts Johnny Crypto. But anyway, now you guys know I'm Johnny Crypto up on BitShares here. So very, very interesting historical view, November 2nd, 2014. Most of Dan Larimer's projects, when they initially come out, they end up very high up here. See it in the 4th position. And, we saw that with STEEM as well, which we're going to look at here in a second. Now, it has fallen from there. The one thing I would say about BitShares, it is confusing to use, especially when you first get on here. And then there is low volume oftentimes. So if you go to, let's say, buy something that says Litecoin to BitShares, if you don't check this order book, and you send a bunch of Litecoin here, you might blow through the whole entire order book and end up with a higher price cost average on your order than you thought you were initially going to get. So you got to kind of be privy to that. So it's not the most user-friendly, is what I would say the biggest disadvantage. So I think what BitShares suffered from as well is the crypto nuclear winter of 2015. Stuff was flatlined. It was obviously flatlined through 2016 as well. And then when we got into 2017, it shot up, and then we had this kind of pullback in the altcoin market, and then we had the return of the alts, so the revenge of the alts going up here. We've had this recent pullback and stuff, but I'm Very bullish on BitShares because of some of these countries trying to lock down access to exchanges. Now, again, like I said, with the delegated proof of stake, you have the witnesses over here. You'll see some of the same witnesses over on the STEEM blockchain as well. I'm not seeing this is a witness over on STEEM. And if this is the same, there's Roland P. He just processed a block. So he's over there. He's over here on the STEEM blockchain as well. Has been a very important part of the community. Roland P right here. I've voted for him. So everybody who owns BitShares or owns STEEM Power can vote for the witnesses. And there's certain reasons if you're like, okay, Jesta and Good Karma have been great third-party developers, have done a great job. And then so, you know, they're going to get a lot of votes and they're going to be higher up here processing a lot of blocks. And it's very lucrative to be one of these top 20 witnesses. They're making mad cash right now. So we see the STEEM blockchain, instant transactions, pretty much immediate transactions, 3-second block times. And we see all these other applications being able to be developed on top of the STEEM blockchain. This is DTube, decentralized YouTube essentially. This is Box Mining. You know, he's out on YouTube, does a great job. Got paid a ton of money for this post, and it says $444, but that is well over $2,000 because the Steam-backed dollar is worth a lot right now. So imagine that. He just got paid way more on the STEEM blockchain for this video than he does on YouTube, even though he has a big following, all that. You see another application here, Steep Shot. It's like an Instagram clone for the STEEM blockchain. This person evidently posted a receipt. This looks like Korean, and they made $44.73. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that says. Maybe it's something hilarious. I don't get it. I don't know Korean. I wish I did. But you know, you see all kinds of different posts here. They have the iOS and the Android app. Very cool. Here's another look at the STEEM blockchain of different things that's happening. You know, you can see all the people that I voted or different rewards that I'm getting. You can see all this stuff, the information on the voting power, how much STEEM power I have. All these kind of things are a view into the STEEM blockchain. Here's again all the people I've voted for, you know, as witnesses here on the STEEM blockchain. So if we've learned anything at this point, Dan Larimer has delivered on 2 major platforms, BitShares and on STEEM. These work. STEEM is one of the main examples of a real-world application on the blockchain. Yes, digital money, peer-to-peer digital cash is a very important utility or a very important application, but so is freedom of speech, and so is the ability to have non-censored information on the blockchain in a decentralized manner. Because, I mean, as we've seen with YouTube going through the adpocalypse, and this particular channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, is not monetized. I'm a YouTube partner. I have other channels that are monetized, and for some reason, even though I have never had a copyright strike or anything against me, I'm still not monetized on this channel, and there's a bunch of other people going through the same thing, and we're just like, why are we not getting monetized? We've been waiting around for months. So it's really ridiculous. On DTube, you're monetized right away, and it's the people's votes. And here, you know, here's the people who upvoted them. How much money was there? Everything's transparent. Everybody has a chance to get on there and earn something. So very cool, very real-world application. Now let's take a look at STEEM. When it first came out, this is July 17, 2016, when they released the first payouts, the price shot way up. This is when I found out about STEEM, and it was in the 3rd position. And it really seemed like, wow, this is huge. This is a huge thing for blockchain technology. This is really a very interesting economy and all this kind of stuff. The one major thing that STEEM suffered from was a really unbalanced initial distribution. For a blockchain to be successful, you have to have wide distribution, And with this, there was essentially like a ninja launch, or it was like a ninja mining situation where STEEM Incorporated, some of the original founders, and some initial investors / whales that were early in there were able to get a very, very large amount of STEEM. And then it was like they were just God kings out there, and the way the reward was set up was completely a terrible situation. And so it just seemed like a very unfair platform to people who got on there in 2016. So any kind of success seemed to be sort of short-lived or just kind of hit and miss. So there was kind of a handful of people that were then earning a bunch, and then like everybody else was just a peasant. You know, it was just a really weird situation. And so a lot of people lost faith in STEEM and got a bad taste in their mouth. There was also 100% inflation rate. And the thinking behind that was that the adoption rate, because of the ability to get paid from social media, which you weren't able to do over on Facebook and these other places, that the adoption rate would be so fast that the 100% inflation rate would keep the price point around $1. Well, that didn't happen. The price got power bombed into the ground, and it went down to about 7 cents. And it was just complete death spiral. We thought that maybe this like amazing platform was finished. And it was like a sad thing. It was like, man, like they like really, you know, the thinking was, man, they really messed this up. They're not even like, they're not responding to anything. Everybody asked them, why are you powering down? Why are you doing this? Nobody would answer. So it was just like, it was very frustrating. That being said, we're starting to see this come to fruition with these third-party applications. This is third-party development here with DTube and with Steep Shot. Amazing, amazing stuff. And we're starting to see the true power of the STEEM blockchain and really seeing this, develop. So that's super cool. Very, very bullish on STEEM and its future. And in the future, we are going to have STEEM media tokens. There are going to be ICOs. They're going to be done on STEEM on a future hard fork here coming up. So that's going to really open up the door to tokenize the entire internet. You know, this kind of stuff over, let's say other websites that have a community, whether it's a subreddit or it's some other website with a blog on it, they're going to be able to integrate this type of payment feature to where then they're going to be able to, reward their community essentially in the same manner. Now, if you're thinking, okay, well, wasn't Ethereum supposed to have all these social networks? Weren't they supposed to have all these decentralized applications? Well, here's one of them called Acacia. And this was being talked about, back in 2016 when I first got on STEEM, on the STEEM blockchain. And this was supposed to be, built on Ethereum. And of course, we don't see it yet. Why? Because it can't be. There's not enough capacity. This is pegged just between Ether Delta and CryptoKitties, and then the transactions going, back and forth between exchanges into people's wallets. Acacia cannot run on Ethereum. Now, one of the Ethereum co-founders is one of the lead guys for Acacia. And so they're not going to come out and say, okay, this isn't going to work on Ethereum. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. They're probably playing CSGO all day because this thing is not going to come out. It can't work unless Ethereum scales and does it quickly and scales a lot. Otherwise, you're not going to have a social media site that's like Steemit on the Ethereum blockchain. It can't handle it. And that's not just me saying that. I mean, you can look at this right here and you can read tweets from Bittrex and stuff about high gas fees on the Ethereum network. It's not something I'm making up. I said the same thing about the Salt platform, and a lot of people didn't like my video, and they were like, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, dude, it's not going to work on the Ethereum network. Now, we're going to talk about EOS here and really dive in and kind of show how maybe some of these smart contracts and some of these decentralized applications that have been built on the Ethereum blockchain could potentially migrate over to EOS. So let's get into it, guys. So EOS is still in the ICO phase, and there's going to be 1 billion coins released, and this is going on for a year's time. Now that's different than other ICOs where people jump in and create a big dog pile and try to get in there. You know, this would last a year, and the reason for that is to avoid what happened with STEEM, where there was that ninja launch and the distribution was way out of whack. This gives everybody a year's amount of time to participate in this ICO, and it kind of mimics mining in a way that everybody kind of has their shot at it and their chance to get in there. Now, every 23-hour period of time, there's 2 million EOS that are released. Now, you see this over here, it says US IP detected, participation not allowed, so it won't let me click on that. Now, if you have the latest version of the Opera web browser, then you can have a free VPN in here and you can set it to somewhere else. And then you can access that, and then you could click on, you know, get EOS and go in there and do it. But what I'm going to tell you is that it's not worth it. I went through it. You know, I spent probably 3 days doing it every day, waiting for that 23-hour period. And what you'll see is, when you see how much Ethereum there is, and then it'll get down to, like, let's say 30 minutes, and you're like, oh man, this could be a great deal, you know, and you do the calculation on it, it really comes out to the same price that it's going for on HitBTC or Binance. From everything I found out, it's not worth your time because everybody else is sitting there looking at it too, and within that last 30 minutes, they're trying to fire off Ethereum to this thing to snag the EOS at the low price. But you know, it just doesn't work out. It just works out to be the same. So you're just wasting your time doing it. So let's look into EOS a little bit further. You have a large amount of contributors working on it and aggressive development happening. So this isn't like a lot of ICOs where whatever they're doing, if they're mental masturbating or whatever they're doing, or playing CSGO in the office, you know, this is real code. The testnet is out. This is the real thing. And then you can see the past projects with STEEM and BitShares and know that, hey, you know, past performance, just like an athlete, hey, this guy's hit the game-winning shot the other times, we better give him the ball. So Dan Larimer and the rest of the people working on this, it's not like they're doing nothing. You know, there's already a proven track history, and they're going forward with it. And so I'm kind of putting some faith into that for sure. So let's look at the white paper here and really point out some interesting things. Well, okay, first let's look at the roadmap. I want to get down here, winter 2017, spring 2018. Develop example applications. This can be very important. Example applications are critical to providing the proving the platform provides the features required by real developers. Now, once they get some of those sample applications out there on the test net, it's really going to give developers an idea of what is possible so that they can kind of like push the limits and play around with that. I think that's important. Bounties for successfully attacking network. That's great, you know, have hackers, you know, get incentivized to really, really kind of dig deep and try to see what kind of issues can be exploited here. And so there's a chance to get some bounties to battle harden this thing, get it ready for the main net. So we see here that they're going to put up the stable version of the main net, and then after that they're going to move towards optimizing the code for parallel execution. That's going to give it a lot more capacity and everything, but initially they are going to come out, it looks like, with the main net that's not going to have as much optimization for parallel execution. So let's move over here to the white paper and really point out some important things. Free usage. Now what we see on BitShares and with STEEM is that you have free transaction cost and pretty much instant transactions. It's very important. Can you imagine if, let's imagine if, let's say Android, there was an app for Android, like for instance Instagram. And what if every time somebody liked somebody's picture on Instagram, it cost Instagram had to pay Android, or essentially Google, for every time somebody liked a picture. It'd be very cumbersome. It would be hard to pass that fee off to the end user, and it would be hard to pass it off to the developer of, let's say, Instagram, which is ultimately owned by Facebook, but you get the example that it can't cost too much for the developer or the end user. It's pretty much got to be free. Now, there is a very negligible fraction of a penny cost to each transaction just to prohibit massive spamming of the blockchain, but for all practical purposes, it's free. So, you know, that's going to give them flexibility and going to provide for widespread adoption. That's part of the problem with Ethereum, is that gas prices are too high, so to develop on it, it's too expensive. And you really can't pass that to an end user, because what if, like over here on STEEM it, every time, let's say, what if I upvoted, that it directly like pulled money out of my wallet? And then it'd be like, well, I don't want to upvote anybody because it's going to cost me. So any kind of transaction that's done as far as upvoting or comments or that kind of thing, that is, it kind of takes the friction out of the tipping. Like with something like Doge and Redcoin are kind of built as these tipping coins, it's still, you see the money leave. You know, like if you're going to tip $10, it's like, well, okay, I have to send $10 worth of this. You kind of feel that happen. But when I upvote somebody, you know, on Steem, I've got a certain amount of power, you know, that I've got a certain amount of voting power here, and I don't really feel it. Like all these auto votes are going over, and yes, like it is taking some of my power away, and I could hog that power for myself, but it all kind of goes back to game theory. If you're being greedy, then people are going to be greedy against you, you know, kind of thing. It's like you know, it's, you help out your friends, they're going to help you out, kind of thing. And so very interesting economy there and how that works, but it is very important that it doesn't cost the end user and that it doesn't cost third-party developers a ton of money to essentially build on that platform. Now, parallel performance. Large-scale applications need to divide the workload across multiple CPUs and computers. So, you know, that's obvious, you know, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense here. So one of the things on here, it says the goal is to enable two accounts to exchange messages back and forth within a single block without having to wait 3 seconds between each message. To enable this, the EOS.io software divides each block into cycles. So that's very interesting, that basically two accounts could communicate back and forth within the same block in that 3 seconds. Now, to my understanding, I don't think the STEEM blockchain is capable of that. It would be like, for instance, if, let's say I upvoted box mining here, and imagine in the same block, let's say in that block it says, okay, Brian Phobos upvoted box mining. But then in maybe that same box, that it's programmed that, okay, if Brian Phobos upvotes box mining, then box mining upvotes Brian Phobos's last post. Like that could take place in the same block. So I think that piece of it, I am pretty sure is more advanced than what you're able to do in each block on the STEEM blockchain, if I'm correct. Now, so EOS is going to use delegated proof of stake, just like what we talked about before with this, where, you know, known entities or people that we trust are going to be voted into power to secure the network and to process the different transactions. The block reward, this is a very important thing. I've had this question before, and as we see how we were talking about the million EOS that are going to be released by the end of this, by June 2018, people have asked, okay, well, are there going to be more coins? And there are. So here's what's going to happen. The EOS.io software may be configured to enforce a cap on producer awards such that the total annual increase in token supply does not exceed 5%. That's very interesting there. Does not exceed 5%. Now, like I said, with STEEM, when it first came out, the inflation rate was 100%. And that didn't work out very well. Then in a future hard fork, essentially it got dropped down to where it was going to be 10% inflation rate, and then each year it was going to drop down 1%. So right now we're around 9% inflation rate on the STEEM blockchain. On the Bitcoin blockchain, we're at about 4% inflation rate. But in the early days of, let's say, Bitcoin, we were at a much higher inflation rate. Even a couple of years ago, we were at around 10% inflation rate. So if you think about EOS only having 5% or less, then the supply is more restricted from the get-go. And in my mind, that's going to say that the price is going to get pretty high kind of quicker, so to speak. Now, one thing I want to say about the development of EOS is that essentially it's going to use WebAssembly, which is going to allow people to program in C or C++. And I think that that's really going to help. Now, with Ethereum, they basically developed their own programming language called Solidity. And, it was built specifically for contract-oriented execution and for implementing smart contracts. And it was influenced by C++, Python, and JavaScript. And with WebAssembly, I think you're going to have syntactically, obviously there's going to be like specific things for smart contracts, but I think it's going to allow like more developers to come over and not have to kind of learn like more of a new language. But I might be wrong about that. I think what you had, from what I've heard, a lot of Solidity developers kind of were a lot of people who were web developers who maybe had a lot of experience in JavaScript, and then they came over and were programming in Solidity. And so some of these smart contracts were pretty sloppy and they weren't really secure. Now that could happen with any programming language. You can have somebody come over and it's a new thing, and they could come over and not really do 100% correct things. But I don't know. We'll see how that works as far as having WebAssembly, versus potentially something else. I go back to the white paper here, see if there's anything else. Oh, here's an important point that I wanted to point out. So in the white paper it says, Ethereum virtual machine. The virtual machine has been used for most existing smart contracts and could be adapted to work within an EOS.io blockchain. It is conceivable that EVM contracts could be run within their own sandbox inside the EOS.io software-based blockchain, and that with some adaptation, EVM contracts could communicate with other EOS.io software blockchain applications. Now, what that tells me is, let's pretend Acacia, let's say they weren't just playing CSGO, and they pretty much have their application ready, but it just won't run on the Ethereum blockchain without just completely being bogged down and being a terrible product. And they're waiting for Ethereum to scale. But let's say Ethereum doesn't scale soon enough. Maybe they're able to take those Ethereum contracts and all their programming that they've done so far and move it over, and essentially the thing could run kind of in a virtual machine or inside of a sandbox that would run Ethereum contracts on the EOS platform. That's what that's kind of telling me. I don't know how soon that could be implemented, but I think that'll be very important for a lot of these applications. It's like I mentioned Salt before, that I don't think it's going to run on the Ethereum blockchain, firing off all these loans. If they can get all the regulatory things, finished, that's another hurdle. But let's say with Salt, they're firing off all these loans on the Ethereum blockchain. Is it's at capacity. So how are you? It's just blowing up the whole thing just with Ether Delta and CryptoKitties. So to add kind of a major platform onto it, I think it's going to be tough. So if they can adapt that code over to something like EOS, if Ethereum doesn't scale fast enough, then that would be huge. A lot of people would migrate over to EOS. And I don't know. So in the end, you have to ask yourself, why did STEEM and BitShares, even being as brilliant as they are, and having, you know, like when people ask me, okay, well, what's your address on STEEM? It's Brian Phobos. I don't say 1V, 2X, capital Z, you know, all that kind of stuff, non-human readable stuff. This is my alias. This is my address. When I send coins from Bittrex, I send it to Brian Phobos, and it ends up here. Now, let's, and same thing with BitShares. You know, same thing, you have an alias. To be true peer-to-peer digital cash, you're going to need the aliases, just like we have email addresses, just like we have domain names. Instead of, you know, thinking of IP addresses, you're going to need that for mass user adoption. You have instant transactions, you have free transactions. So by all practical purposes, you could say STEEM, as just one function of its blockchain, is what we need for peer-to-peer digital cash. And why has it dropped to, you know, 34th position and 35th position? You know, why is there all this other stuff up here when these are so amazing? And I would say my main thing is that BitShares is hard to use and went through the nuclear winter. And then sometimes people are just into newer things. You know, you see somebody wants a new car when the car 2 or 3 years old, it's fine. People want something new. They always want something new. So I think that that comes into effect with different coins. And then BitShares was hard to use. There was lower volume on it. People kind of overlooked it somewhat, but I'm still bullish on it. This is a very important piece of the crypto economy. And then I'd say with STEEM, even though it is a very, very important piece and one of the main examples of a real world application being on a blockchain is the STEEM blockchain. Why did it fall to this? And I would say it was because of the initial distribution, and it turned a lot of people off when they got on there and they were like, this is unfair. And there's just all these super whales just immediately. And it's really harmed the STEEM blockchain, when in reality, STEEM should be, in my opinion, in the top 5. And I think we're going to see a huge increase in this. There's going to be a lot of demand driven to STEEM. If it can regain some kind of top 5 position has yet to be seen. I think what it really is going to come down to is the exchanges that have the fiat pairings, you know, so Coinbase, Bitfinex, those types of places are going to have that pairing to like US dollars. Now Kraken already has it. Kraken's lower volume than, let's say, Coinbase or GDAX, but it's an important step. So let's say if they add EOS, you know, or Kraken already has EOS as a fiat pairing. And if, let's say, when the mainnet comes out, if EOS gets added to Coinbase, and then the other exchanges like Bittrex, Poloniex, Binance, KuCoin, all those kind of exchanges, if they add EOS as its own market, like we see with Ethereum, that Ethereum has its own markets, like EOS to NEO or EOS to NIM, then EOS has a chance to become number 1. And with free transactions and instant transactions, essentially, then it could potentially hold down the potential for peer-to-peer digital cash, and it would be able to do all the smart contracts and have real-world decentralized applications built on top of it. But ultimately, I think what's going to end up in the number 1 spot, whether it's Ethereum after it scales, or Cardano, or NEO, or EOS, or even if you take a step a little bit further down and say that Lisk could get up there. But I think that ultimately it'll be a platform that'll end up in number 1. We're going to see Bitcoin continue to lose its dominance unless the exchange traded fund hits the US stock market. I think we're going to continue to see this decrease. But that's my opinion, guys. It's not financial advice, but if it really comes down to it, in my opinion, if I could only keep 3 coins, if I had to sell every position out other than 3 coins, EOS would be one of those coins. I think it's going to be very important for the future and for blockchain technology. And I think it could potentially change the world. Please hit that subscribe button, like the video, follow me on all social media at Brian Phobos, Steem it, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Have a great night, guys.